Hi, everybody. I am so excited. You have no idea how excited I am to be here with Barbara Alice Mann. That is Barbara Alice Mann. I'm going to read you her bio first and then tell you how I was introduced to her work. So we're going to start with the bio. Barbara Alice Mann is a Ph.D. scholar and Professor of Humanities in the Honors College of the University of Toledo. She's authored 15 books, some of which I have here, I'll show you later, on indigenous histories and practices, and works for the rights of the people indigenous to Ohio. An Ohio Bear Clan Seneca with community recognition, she was the speaker or the Northern Director of the Native American Alliance of Ohio for 20 years. And some of her books are here, which we will talk about later. Incredible, all of them. And the one that we're mainly going to talk about today, here's another one, which is new. Incredible, is sort of focusing on this one really today, but all her books are incredible and you can order them on Amazon. Okay, so now before we get to the questions, I was introduced to Barbara Alice Mann's work in a class that I took at Morbid Anatomy on matriarchal studies. And we start out as a book group. We've been together over 3 years now with Joanna Evanstein, Morbid Anatomy. And we started out with one book of Haida's, then moved on to another. We're still investigating all kinds of matriarchal societies. We took a field trip to outside of Oaxaca to Yucatan to visit a matriarchal society there. And what I was struck by, and so really why I want to talk to Barbara Alice Mann, is she has a chapter on the Iroquois and the Iroquois Confederacy, also called the Haudenosaunee. Am I pronouncing that?
Haudenosaunee.
Oh,
close enough.
Close enough. And the part that I just could not believe was that there existed and still existed a matriarchal society that is kind of covers all the bases, sort of Heidi's sort of structure. So it was politically, spiritually, economically, and culturally an egalitarian society. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with her, because I did not know it existed. And then we're going to hit a couple of points that I want to make sure we talk about. One is that this society, it was a peaceful society, and you will correct me, it was 1100 when the Confederation started.
1142.
1142. And they influenced both, this is the key part, both the founding, unfortunately, fathers of the United States, but it's clear they were fathers, and also 100 years later, correct, the suffragists. So it's super important in the history of America, and I think it's super important to learn where we went really wrong, and in terms of all kinds of things. So we're going to we have a half hour to dig right in there. So I'm going to start. I'm so excited. Okay, so here's my first thing. This is the quote of yours. All this leaves me shaking my head and wondering sadly how American feminists especially can have forgotten the model and the inspiration of their own movement. I'm going to pronounce this word wrong again. So can you say Gantuwisas?
Gantuwisas.
Gantuwisas. Those are Iroquois women acting in her capacity as a public official. The Gantuwisas, women of the sisterhood of the lineage, led her nation in politics, economics, social life, and spirituality. I mean, to me, that is incredible. She was more than a little instrumental in creating the constitutional government that established their civil, political, economic, and social spiritual rights. Okay, that blows me away. So can you explain, first of all, would you like to start with the political, the social, the spiritual? I'd like to kind of go through, where do you want to start?
They all feed together, and it starts actually with Skyworld.
Okay.
And First Woman. You got those traditions right. Sky Woman coming down.
Probably doesn't know anything. So we're talking to an audience who's not familiar with any of this at all. They don't know anything about the Iroquois at all. So you have to kind of start at the beginning a little bit. I know we don't have much time.
Okay. No, we don't have much time. Okay, the beginning is there's a First Woman. And she comes down, creates all the land on the back of Turtle, has her daughter. Her daughter basically creates half the crops. She brought the other half from Skyworld. And one of the main important points of that story is every step the Sky Woman takes, the land rushes out from beneath her feet. That's a reference to making soil. Native American women made soil. And we've been telling the Anthros and the Archeos and everybody, we made the dirt for ever since they've been talking to us. Um, and they didn't believe us. They said, "Oh, it's a little fable." And then they find something they call terra preta. They gave it a Portuguese name because it's down in the Amazon. They go, "Oh my God, they were making dirt." You think? Okay, now this is important because everything feeds together. It's not like they're separate categories. That's a very Euro way of thinking. But the economic is kind of the underpinning of just about everything. And you've got to have dirt if you're going to grow crops.
Mhm.
And so there was very poor soil, so crop dirt was made. The three sisters are co-planted. That's corn, bean, squash, and they came from Skyworld. The Lynx, the daughter, invented and created potatoes. Uh, One of her twin sons invented strawberries. So it was just filling up the planet with um, all kinds of good things. Now, it's important that you have a mother and a daughter. That's the primary relationship in tradition, in spiritual creation tradition. The men don't show up till the third generation.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's the mother and daughter
Hmm.
who are putting things together. The primary relationship, socially, economically, politically, spiritually, is mother daughter.
Okay.
Agan is actually the lineage. It actually indicates lineage.
Okay.
So it's a family lineage, and a lot of anthros go, "Oh, it's fictive. No, it's not fictive. Maybe your patriarchy is fictive. You ever think of that?" No, they haven't. But it's the oldest woman and her descendants in her particular line, and their different clans. It's very complex if you get into it. But that is the basis. It's an economic basis. She is in charge of the household. She's in charge of the crops. She's in charge of all the food. Now, think what that means if women alone are in charge of the food. Who doesn't get to eat if we're not happy? If you think about that, you know, it's based very much on the mother suckling principle. Mother suckles child. Child is part of mother. Together they create. So that's a strong social and economic unit. By the way, the men, and they didn't start hunting until the Younger Dryas, which was like 12,000 years ago. Before that, everybody was vegetarian. The winter that wouldn't end came. It was 1,000-year winter, and the men started hunting because there was no food. But even so, the men need to bring the fruits of the hunt and give it to the clan mother of their wife.
Okay.
So that's very female oriented. And then she and her, sisters and daughters see to it being spread out so that everybody gets what they need and nobody hoards anything.
Right.
So women are solely in charge of the food and also what the old French called the treasury, meaning like all the clothes and all every kind of
Oh, so
beading, sewing implements.
they distributed all the things like that, the women?
Yes, yes, kept
Also,
them
like,
distributed, including weapons.
weapons.
Men
That's what I'm interested in, is the weapons.
men could not go to war if the woman had not appointed warriors, okay, and called for the war. Only women could
They
call a
didn't want
war.
to lose their kid. Is that part of it? They didn't want.
That's a good part of it. There's a tradition where the women, when the Lenape, the Eastern Lenape, and the Iroquois, after the Dutch and English have been in there messing everybody up with their war on beaver and getting enmities going and using people as their proxy fighters. The Lenape and the Iroquois got together. The Lenape were invited into the league through the Cayuga, who adopted people unite in Cayuga adopt. And the grandmothers said to one another, "We did not give birth to these children and suckle them carefully and dress them and make sure they were well and raise them, watch them grow to adulthood just to see them die.
Right.
We are not going to do this, and therefore there's going to be peace. And if anyone ever sees anyone taking advantage of the woman or beating up on the woman, that then the men are going to go and make sure that does not happen. The woman is Mother Earth."
Right. Now, how did they govern? I have two things that interest me. One is they didn't. Did they keep a peace for a very long
Oh
time?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can sense.
It was against the law. Okay, the way you do that is you create gifting circles.
Mhm.
It's a fire alliance, and then it can actually become part of the structure. When the Europeans arrived, we founded in 1142, and by the time the Europeans got there, there were 61 different nations
Mhm.
affiliated with the League. It was like the UN, and it's against the law to make war.
Right. I mean, they had a written. There was a document, a constitution,
Well, it
right?
was in wampum writing, but
But yeah, that the U.S. Just to be clear, that the U.S. Well, we'll talk about that later. Okay. Yeah, it was a real constitution.
oh yes, absolutely. The sections on how it runs and everything. And it's in writing if you want to go find it. It was written down in the 18th, 19th century in different versions. Um,
This was a big deal. They had a written constitution, the first
oh
written
yeah,
constitution ever, before the Magna Carta.
oh yes.
So,
60 years before the Magna Carta. The only older standing democratic constitutional government is the Icelandic Althing.
oh, okay.
932, 936. That was put together by the Vikings that fled the missionaries and went to Iceland. And they were pretty parallel. I don't think they were quite matriarchal, but they were a parallel society, women and men having joint power. Okay, so there's the political powers of women is what keeps it running and keeps it peaceful. Um, First of all, only women can nominate people to office.
Oh, really?
Consider what the government would look like if only women could nominate people to office.
Okay.
The women give men and women their credentials. If somebody's misbehaving, the women impeach them.
Really?
Women impeach them. Impeachment is our idea. One of the ideas that the U.S. took over. All
Wow.
of and by the way, the feminist movement started before 1848 at Seneca Falls. It started with the revolution. You know, you got people like Mary Wollstonecraft who were aware. I mean, I guess she eventually married him. He'd seen it in action and explained things, and especially things like divorce, no fault divorce, women's rights in choosing a mate. Women chose and proposed to the man.
They didn't take all that stuff. I mean, there was all those stuff they could have taken, like women voting. I mean, and they didn't take any of that, right? I mean, they just,
Well, not because Abigail Adams didn't try. She wrote John and she said, "Now look here, don't you forget the ladies. You
I
know, we were in this too." And of course, he wrote back and said smugly, "Well, we know how to protect our male prerogatives." And so they didn't let women
all
in.
there. I keep saying it's all there. You can go back if you're looking for structural changes that need to happen. And the suffragists did try this too. Like, here are all the
Yeah,
things. We talk about like, okay, so there are things that affect the family. So
they
divorce.
didn't throw away God. That's the problem. Until you get rid of this sky god, this all-knowing male, their little portable god, is you're not going to have an egalitarian society because the whole idea of God and his minions is extremely male-dominated and hierarchical. So the Seneca Falls feminists just didn't throw out God. That was their big mistake.
Oh, really? Okay. Did that
And
come?
people like Mary Wollstonecraft would have.
Did any of the original suffragists like think realize that was going on and like just the Christianity isn't going to work here?
I think a couple of them did. I think probably Harriet Tubman did. But the Eurofeminists were so deeply ingrained with class bias and racism that
Right.
couldn't quite get a hold of it. Now you get down to some later ethnographers, some of the female ethnographers, they started to get it. But the system was really draconianly patriarchal and wasn't going to, give voice. And in fact, they did everything in their power to discredit the matriarchy. Morgan said, "Oh, it's the lowest form of savagery." And Marx I found particularly amusing because he said, "Oh, you start with this very low matriarchy, and then you build and you get structure and blah blah blah." And the end point of his whole system is to go back to what we started with.
Exactly. So that is where we need to. I mean, and the thing is the blueprints are right there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's there, and there's so many things you can look at. We got to talk about sexual assault and rape because apparently rape there just didn't. Can you tell what happened if someone raped someone, or was no rape, or I mean,
if a European raped an indigenous woman, he was going to get killed as quick as her brothers could find him. And that's assuming she and her sisters didn't do it.
right? Because it didn't. But within the indigenous people, it was not within the Iroquois.
No, no, no.
I mean,
You would be a dead man very fast.
they
Very fast.
just didn't happen, right? I mean, it wasn't
No,
allowed. It wasn't part of the system.
no, I mean, you might get somebody who's pathological, psychotic or something, but he would be very well controlled,
And how
not
did
allowed to do harm.
and how would you control someone? Like say go live
Kindness,
what?
kindness,
Kindness.
just kindness. Yes. It's opposition that it creates anger. It's denigration that creates anger.
Wow.
Anger is the specialty of Europe, if you stop and think about it. It's that damn God again,
So it all goes back to God.
I think.
Okay. Well, okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions on specific points. We know that Benjamin Franklin was influenced, women's suffrage was influenced. Can you explain what exactly is the Iroquoian Constitution, the Great Law of Peace, which formed the legal framework? What was it? And can you talk about exactly what it was? Like it was wampum beads and what was included in that? Because I'm
No,
interested.
it's a form of government. It was a form of government that was brought down from Canada, Ontario, from the Attawandaron, who already had it. It was not invented by the Iroquois. It was brought down by the New York Iroquois. It already existed up north.
Oh, okay.
There was fighting going on between the various Iroquoian nations. It was a civil war over subsistence methods, whether it's going to be hunting or farming. And the women wanted to go to farming, and a lot of men did too. And then others were taking hunting to an extreme of cannibalism. It was a really nasty fight. And the people in the north were scared.
Time period is this? Like the nine,
Pardon?
what time period?
900 to 1,000. Actually, probably starting much earlier than that, but I don't have time to go into all the traditions.
It's about
There
a
were
thousand.
giants. There were giants, and they were the cannibals.
Okay.
Okay, so the women in the north said, "We don't want this fighting spreading to us because they're the neutrals. They don't want the fighting coming up." So first, Jekoshe comes down. She is the corn woman. She's talking about how you set up the cornway. She came down first. And then the fellow called the peacemaker, because you need a speaker to the women and a speaker to the men. So he was sent down. He was quite a young man when he started it, just in his 20s. The grandmothers gave him everything. They told him how it should be structured. They told him how to put it together. They told him how to explain. He was their speaker to the men.
Okay.
So he came down, and first thing he did was get the blessing of Chikosheshe, the woman who came to corn woman. And they worked together, she with the women, he with the men. She was more important than he was, although you don't get that impression the way tradition gets told now. In fact, they even confuse the peacemaker with the eldest twin in the creation epic. People really The missionaries mangled all the traditions for their own purposes. Ethnographers and historians got it pretty wrong a lot. So, it's a method of sorting out, and the people that still know it, trying to smooth it out. Hewitt and Parker, Parker was Seneca, Hewitt was Tuscarora, and they tended to get it a lot more accurate. But anyway, these two worked for, some traditions say that the peacemaker, when he came down, was like about 20, and once the league was established, he was 120.
Ooh.
And she was pretty old too. They were both very old. And they eventually persuaded. It was no fighting or murder or any of that Euro stuff. It was pure persuasion. Okay, here's how you set up a government where everybody's got a say and nobody rides roughshod. Here's how you do it. Explain over and over and over and over again. And so they got it all together. They got everybody to agree except for the one fellow that used to be running the whole show. And they finally were able to convince him because they approached him using a song that uh, Jinko Shisha gave him.
Uh-huh.
So that quelled the waters and made him accessible. And so, anyway, he turns out to be the first chairman of the Men's Grand League, and she takes over as the head clan mother of the league. And Peacemaker is tired; he goes home.
Wow.
But his seat on the men's council is retired permanently. Nobody holds it because nobody could do a job as well as he. Tikoshiche is always replaced. That's a position title.
Oh, but the consensus did work for this lasting peace. Let's just be
Oh,
clear.
yes.
Model, it worked. This Confederacy model did work for lasting peace for many, many years until,
Hundreds, hundreds, hundreds.
so everyone should know that. And it really could be, there's so much we can learn, I feel like, and I think you would say for the big problems we have now, which are obviously economic, huge inequality, we're destroying the planet, we're in wars that are out of control. And all of these things, there's different structural systems which we can learn. I can't say the word, Iroquois,
Okay, that's your name.
yeah.
Never mind, just say Iroquois.
Iroquois, sorry, and that really can impact our lives. I mean, they're there, they exist, they're written, and some of these things like childcare. I mean, there are a lot of things that are kind of simple things we could implement, or we could change the whole structure better. But I mean, right? Don't you think that there's a lot of information?
Well, the structure already exists.
Right,
Matriarchy already exists. It's just suppressed.
right.
And I think Jen Vaughn's gone into that quite a bit. She's got good pieces on that.
Yeah, we have a talk with Jen on Friday.
Yeah, we'll ask her about that. She works out pretty well, but she's right. It exists, and in fact, it's the only thing holding up late stage capitalism. She's absolutely right.
Right. I'm gonna have to ask you about something on a different topic, but it's really interesting to me. So you recommended that I read your most, I think it's your most recent book. You have so many books. This book.
Yeah, yeah. Woman Who Married the Bear. That's with Karina Kalo. She was my co-author because there are traditions of women marrying bears going back 12,000 years and older, and they're all across the indigenous global north.
Mhm.
So she mainly comes from the Sami traditions, and there's some other traditions. She's actually found things as far south as Anatolia about that, and Native American northern traditions. Actually, I found traditions of women marrying the bear as far south as Mexico. So those traditions exist, and they're very rich. Originally, it was about continuation and hibernation and living, you know, cave dwelling, that kind of thing. Um, then, when the giants started coming in during the Bowling Ellerod warming shortly before the Younger Dryas, these are all climate changes. Uh, a series of comets from the Taurid meteors came. It was like a torrent swarm of meteors and hit the Earth and did serious, serious damage 12,800 years ago. And they now know that happened. They've found some of the craters that they know this happened. And it led to that 1,000-year winter that changed everything. and especially with the really tall people who would come in. I think they were probably heavily Neanderthal. Um, they still coexisted to a certain extent, but they were mostly gone by then, except that different populations had different percentages and influences. We did not necessarily have so much influence till they came in. They characterized themselves as bears. They were green bear and blue bear and white bear and black bear and red bear and all of that.
I mean, that's a weird thing that I'm interested in, but did they shapeshift? Did the women become bears? Did the bears become human? Was
Oh
there?
yeah, you can go back and forth. If you read the chapters, there's a lot of traditions about the women turning into bears from wearing bear suits, and men being bears. Like when the bow and arrow came in, the bears saw the bow and arrow and realized they were probably in trouble, and so they kind of got a guy to show him how to use the bow and arrow. But they realized they'd have to cut off their claws or their claws would catch the arrow. And they decided, no, no, not going to do that. We're just going to stay with the way we are because what we know what to do. But bears can become invisible. Bears are, were in our tradition, the third of the sky helpers to come down.
Oh,
And they were teachers, still are. So they're sky linked as well as earth linked, and that makes them boundary crossers, which is very powerful
I made a
spiritually.
diagram that they go between the sky and the earth, that kind of liminal.
No, they come together.
Oh, they all.
Sky and earth is always melded. You just got to keep it in balance.
Oh,
Cherokee call it the harmony way.
okay. But so there is this sort of fluidity,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, but also between animals and man,
Oh,
women,
yeah. They're all our relatives.
yeah,
We're not different from animals. We're animals.
plants, and we can shift into animals, and they can also shift. It goes both ways, right?
Consciousness goes any way you want. But you tend to, the old ones say, you reincarnate when you come back. It's going to be in the line you were in before. So dogs aren't going to become humans and humans won't become
Oh,
fish.
oh, it doesn't. Okay. Oh, we don't.
Doesn't mean you can't talk to them. You can.
You can.
Of course you can.
I'm highly recommending the books, you guys, because this will totally blow your mind how this existed, and it's worth reading all of them. They're all available on Amazon. There's a whole list of your books. How many books?
Pretty much. Actually, I have about 18 now. I think I'm working on the 19th. I'm now Professor Emerita. I retired at the beginning of last year.
I'm so grateful we got to have this because I mean, really, it rocked my world when I read about you.